have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
Hi!
Aaron, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, pretty good, you know?
All right, it's good. Don't have anything going on specifically, this evening?
I just came back from a video game tournament.
Oh, that's
Placed
nice.
pretty well.
Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
definitely good, yeah.
I'm in the spirits to watch a spooky movie.
Oh, for sure. Yep, it's a dark, dreary evening. Usually we recorded midday and stuff because we have our own stuff we usually have to get to. But tonight, on my behalf, I had to go hang out with the in-laws, or as I call them, the outlaws.
The old balls and chains.
Oh, you know what I mean. But aside from all that good stuff, ended up going a little bit late. Had to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday and stuff, which I was more than happy to do. But definitely eager to get back and record the episode, especially because with this movie being Friday the 13th, this for me was a thing that really hooked me into horror and stuff. Like there was it might have not been my very first experience with a horror movie and stuff. That was pretty much the TV miniseries Ed with Tim Curry, as I mentioned in the very first episode where it scared the daylights out of me. Really, Friday the 13th always attracted me, and I only knew that because of Jason Voorhees. He's a pretty iconic character you see at Halloween all the time. I don't think there's ever an October where you don't see the hockey mask and stuff. With you, Aaron, before I kind of really just dive in even more to my past with it, what do you know about Friday the 13th, and what are your preconceptions or experience with Friday the 13th?
This is the one at the camp.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a camp this time, and Jason comes out of the lake or something. And he's got a hockey mask. I remember we played a game once that was it felt probably like a precursor to Dead by Daylight. I forget what the game was called.
I think it's Friday the 13th.
Was it the Friday the 13th? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember it being so I played that twice. And that's my knowledge of Friday the 13th.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the Friday the 13th series and stuff, experience itself, and really wish the game would have done a little bit better, but really, whenever it comes to it, the Friday the 13th franchise has always been a little bit troubled whenever it comes to the rights. In fact, I think they had just finished a court case on it specifically on who exactly owns the rights to Friday the 13th and stuff, and I'll probably be able to divulge a little bit more about it, but basically, because of the arguments on who owns what and what owns who kind of situation, it kind of caused a lot of trouble for the game to where they couldn't keep supporting it and stuff. Not to mention, it was already kind of rocky road with the glitchiness at the beginning, but I feel like it definitely is very thematic and very fitting for the Friday the 13th series. So I'm glad it's still up and running, but I'm sad it's kind of no support for it anymore, which is why, because I love playing Dead by Daylight, I'm hoping maybe with the rights settled, they might actually be able to get Jason Voorhees into the game. So that way he could join the rest of the roster of iconic slashers that's already in the game.
Yeah, definitely a big missing point there. Because, that's one of the ones, he's definitely one of the people you think of when you think of slasher movie killers.
Absolutely. And I honestly can't really tell you what it is about Jason Voorhees that as a kid attracted me to him. I think just seeing him be this big, hulking, brooding figure with a machete and a hockey mask on, I think just something about that always screamed such a cool design to me, even as a little tiny edgelord as I was in elementary school, hearing about Freddy versus Jason, which I think is also what brought my attention to Friday the 13th, to where that was one of the first movies I tried looking up online because it's rated R, and so I wasn't allowed to watch the series as a little kid and stuff, obviously, for a good reason. Yeah, and so I would always try to Google and figure out stuff whenever it came to Friday the 13th, and everything else with it. But really, I never got too much about it. It was always those horribly compressed videos, YouTube early 2006 era.
144p, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then even then, they weren't allowed to upload the whole movie on there, so I never got too much out of it. And it wasn't until I was able to obtain the collection, like, I want to say it was like, man, it's actually been pretty recent, because whenever they came out with the collection, I was still at the point of like, that's pretty expensive. I don't know if I could buy it. But once I had the funds in like 2015, that's whenever I was like, okay, I'm going to buy it and start watching the series and stuff and getting into it. And I'm really excited and curious to see what you think about this first installment here, which debuted in 1981. So it was 3 years after Halloween. So it's one of the earliest slashers that's currently there. Yeah, absolutely. And pretty much you're just expecting massacres at a camp. Basically, that's what I'm getting so far.
That's all I know about it. Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of.
No, understandable. And I'm trying to triple check just to make sure I didn't. Oh, I was thinking of Friday the 13th Part 2 was in 1981.
Is this another 70s movie?
No, it's actually 1980. So
we're in there.
It's actually one of the first 80 slashers, even though Michael is typically grouped into the 80 slashers since he came like a couple of years shy before the 70s. So as soon as I said 81, I was like, man, I better recheck that. I don't want to check it like...
Fact check.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by Snopes.com.
Thank you, Snopes, for all the money you have definitely been giving us, all the pennies you've been sending in the envelopes. Really appreciated. It's adding up. It's adding up.
Yeah.
But yeah, we won't take too much time and stuff. We're basically going to go get some good brouhaha, watch the film, and be back with you chaps and lads and gals in just a moment, okay?
That's a lot of descriptors.
I mean,
all of it. The whole audience.
Yeah. Nobody's left out. Yeah. Nobody.
We're an inclusive podcast.
Yeah, we're progressive like that.
Yeah.
Real progressive types. Just real progressive, standout icons.
You know what else is progressive? Snope.com. Don't let your family feed you misinformation. Be sure to visit Snopes.com for more information. And so they keep sending us beer tabs that we can send in. We're almost at 100. We'll get a full case at that point.
Yep. It's adding up, boys. Yeah. It's adding up.
Yeah.
All right. Be back with you. Bye.
Goodbye.
So, we just got done watching Sean S. Cunningham's 1980 hit classic, Friday the 13th, and Aaron, I'm very curious to see what your thoughts are after watching the film.
Where's Jason? I want to know!
We'll get there, Let's just jump away from that.
It was good.
Yeah,
it was a good one.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I have a few things that stood out to me, just generally speaking, where like the dialogue was really bad, but it was like really funny this time. Versus last time the dialogue was bad and it's just kind of corny. And it was like a little bit funny, but this time was just like really funny. I think the characters sold it. There was only one character I really didn't like.
Oh yeah, it was. I'm guessing it was Nettie.
Yeah, that guy. Oh man. But everybody else I loved. I loved the Crazy Omen guy. I loved.
Crazy Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph. I loved the people in the beginning. I liked Abby. Was that the
Annie?
There's Annie, and then who was the other one?
Let's see.
In the very beginning.
Well, let's see. Annie's the one who we see at first, trying to get to Camp Crystal Lake.
Super chill one.
Yeah. There's Alice, who's the blonde one.
Alice, okay.
Yeah, she's the blonde one, and then there's Brenda, who has the long dark hair, and then there's Bill, the straight man and stuff. Whenever it comes to stuff, dependable stuff, your beloved Nettie and stuff, the class clown to the nth degree.
God, he's worse than Franklin.
Really?
People don't like Franklin? Fuck Ned, man. Bro, He was the one that shot the arrow, right? Or no?
That was him.
Yeah. He shot an arrow right next to somebody. He could have stabbed him. Could have killed him.
Woo, we're jumping right to the characters.
Yeah.
And
Fuck
then
Ned.
I
I don't like his
Oh,
declassified
God.
school survival guide. Didn't work.
This is unhinged. We're off the rails. Just to go through quick the other characters. There's Mr. Christie, who's opening the camp, and we saw with the sweet stash glasses and the sweet denim shorts and nothing else in the red bandana.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Jack and Marcy, which Jack is played by our beloved Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. No bacon in the film, strangely. Just
maybe,
Kevin.
Yeah, maybe a little bacon.
There was some porking going on.
Okay, so I know we kind of jumped the gun going over characters, but let's for people who don't know the general gist of Friday the 13th, it's pretty basic overall. Yeah, basically Mr. Christie is opening up Camp Crystal Lake, which had been deemed Camp Blood due to a lot of horrible events that occurred there and stuff like murders, drownings. Yes.
No.
That's what we heard. So, despite everyone's skepticism about them opening up the camp working, they decide to go for it anyways, and shenanigans ensue their fourth and stuff. And like we mentioned before, the characters definitely, I feel like they're a little bit stronger and more memorable and stuff than other films. Like, I feel like, again, just literally kind of going through each of the characters, we're able to define them a little bit better and stuff, and they're not quite as watered down as I found them to be, like in Halloween or even Evil Dead a little bit.
Yeah. They definitely all had distinct personalities.
But you're definitely right. They definitely have their own quirky deliveries when it comes to lines. They love doing like impressions of old movies. And then of course Nettie just kind of goes off the rails as the class clown there. But overall, I think it's a good cast of characters to watch and stuff. I think it's like a good body of survivors. Again, kind of like with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I feel like that was a decent group. And I know it's kind of weird to speak for me because as a disclosure and stuff, with this movie, this is probably one of my most watched horror films. Again, this is kind of like one of the biggies I watch whenever I decided, okay, I'm going to jump straight into the world of horror and stuff. And so I've seen it like about 5 times by this point. So it's really interesting being able to watch it. And again, it's fairly an easy watch for me every time. Like every time I'm like, I don't know about it. Because I actually watched it Friday the 13th this year with my younger brother because he had never seen it before. So whenever it came to the podcast, I was kind of like, okay, am I going to get bored of it? Nope. Still definitely entertaining to watch overall. And gotta talk about something. I think out of all the characters, you really liked Crazy Ralph a lot.
Crazy Ralph was just really funny. He just had the look on his face. His lips just look like 2 stretched sausages. I don't know. And he just kind of struts around like he's being real careful, but he just hides in people's pantries and comes out and says, what was the line he keeps on saying?
You're all doomed.
It's a death camp or something.
This place is cursed.
Yeah, this place is cursed. But he calls the camp something specific that now
Camp Blood?
No, he calls it like it's a death camp or something.
Yeah.
A death curse, that's it.
Yes, it's a death curse.
The death curse.
God has sent me.
And then he rides around on his little rusty bicycle. And I feel like that's how I'm going to start entering and exiting rooms now, is God sent me. It's a death curse.
Oh man, that definitely should be your opening line.
I'm going to change my email signature to that. God sent me. You're all doomed.
But I think again, whenever it comes to him kind of being the harbinger of doom, like, I mean, he's definitely just, there's no beating around the bush. He's right on the nose, like harbinger of doom.
Yeah. I hope it they acknowledge him in the other movies, and I hope they tell like why he's. Was he like an original? Was he a camper back in the day or something?
Yeah, they don't really ever explain, and the townspeople are like, "Ah, that's just crazy, Ralph."
He was just sent by God. I think that was the perfect to have the old man town dude that was giving Annie a ride.
Oh yeah, and the truck driver.
Yeah, that's how they introduced Ralph. That truck driver took no shit. He was. Just like, you stupid kids, and then he's like, that's just crazy Ralph.
Oh,
He's got
yeah.
brain worms.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, but that's the attitude he had.
Yeah, I definitely think with this film, there are, like, a lot of, like, scenes that I never get tired of seeing. And again, out of, like, all of these survivors, Annie is my favorite with just her super duper optimism, like, just literally bursting at the seams with
She's
optimism.
just a big old wad of bubble gum.
Yeah. And, like, even whenever the truck driver's, like, telling her to be like, you know, you need to quit. You need to leave. She's just like, why would I quit?
I can't quit.
Yeah.
I just walked 100,000 miles.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because you would think, like, again, it falls into a trope of, like, you know, even if you know bad stuff is going to be happening at the camp, you could still, like, just buy it, like, oh, she's just an optimist, you know? She's just like, I can't quit, you know? I got a job.
Right.
But, yeah, it's really nice to have these cast of characters that you don't mind being around and stuff, because it definitely starts, I mean, I know with Nettie, you started to lose your patience a little bit and stuff, and you'd be like, oh my god.
The whole time I was just like, Nettie needs to be Daddy.
I think literally the first scene he appears in, you specifically said, I hate this character.
Yeah, I was like, I hate this guy. I don't even know what he was doing, but whatever he was doing, I was like, I already hate him. And then he pulls a. Hopefully, this isn't a spoiler. He pulls a sandlot.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, bro. He's just like, I'm gonna shoot people with arrows, and I'm gonna sexually harass them by pretending I'm drowning. It's just like all the worst parts, like all the worst things you could do.
No, for sure. And just as clarification, he doesn't actually shoot somebody with an arrow, but he is purposely trying to get as close to them as possible while they're at the shooting range.
Which
just
is
so
a great way to accidentally shoot somebody with an arrow.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, aside from that, I still think cast of characters is really strong. And one of my other favorite aspects about this movie in general is just the campsite and stuff. Like, it's really nice to look at overall.
It's a very
just like,
pretty camp.
yeah, the
It's a
lush
nice
green
lake.
forest. Yeah, the lake and stuff. So that's another thing I noticed is there's definitely a lot of scenic shots they do to transition. And while they pan on a little bit too long, I don't mind it. It's just nice to look at and stuff. So I feel like whenever it came to it, they did a really great job. And before I forget, there was something that I was tapping a little bit on the prologue and things that you've mentioned before in the previous episode that I feel like I need to tackle now before we dive more into the meat this film has to offer. Meat.
The bacon oven.
The Kevin Bacon slice.
Where are his feet?
So you noticed in Halloween that you're like, man, they're following like all the tropes, you know, like, you know, people have sex, you're gonna die, type deal, like doing all this stuff here. And the interesting thing is, whenever John Carpenter was confronted about these tropes and stuff like that, he was like, no, I never intended like for it to be like, oh, if you're just a good person, you live, and if you're bad, you die.
Well, did a bad job of expressing that.
Yeah.
I mean, opening shot, it's just like these two people that sneak off to have sex and then they die. That's like the first scene. It's like, hey, we're gonna go fuck after doing kumbaya, and there was your mistake.
They're doing a little bit, it's more like kumbaya.
More like bye, y'all.
Oh,
because
there it is! But so that the interesting thing is the tropes that you see in horror films really kind of stems surprisingly from Friday the 13th a little bit as well and stuff, because Sean S. Cunningham, who helped create the movie and stuff, whenever he saw Halloween, he's like, I want to make Halloween. I want to make my own Halloween. And so whenever he was going about like getting ready, he approached Victor Miller, who was the screenplay writer for the movie and stuff, and he's like, hey, I need you to go see Halloween and make me a movie that's Halloween. And crazy thing about Victor Miller, he doesn't write for horror movies at all. So he knew, like, had zero basis for horror. So whenever he went to go see Halloween, he wrote down these little tidbits about, like, a pattern he saw and stuff. So all the stuff that John Carpenter didn't intentionally mean to do, Victor Miller kind of wrote it down and applied it to Friday the 13th. And so clearly you could see it's pretty amped up a little bit whenever it comes to the tropes that follow.
That's really interesting. That like because these are some of the first movies that really define that genre. Right?
Exactly.
And so this is like he literally wrote down the definitions of this genre he saw and then went and made it. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's funny that you kept mentioning like the tropes and stuff like that and stuff, and the fact that Friday the 13th was basically trying to capture the hype and obviously financial success that Halloween garnered and stuff. And it did pretty well, by the way. It made oogle tons of money and stuff.
Interesting statistic.
Yeah, oogle tons. Don't fact check me. Just believe me.
Don't fact check us with Snopes.com. Snopes.com is the world's leading fact checking site.
There it is. There it is. While I'm confirming it down, but so I was really excited to tell you about that, but I didn't want to tell you that this is basically the movie that defined tropes specifically by going like, okay, this is what it is. Oh, and just to let you know, the budget was $550,000.
Okay.
It made $59.8 million.
Nice.
So it was a huge success, even though critics didn't like the film as much as they did Halloween because they thought this was more trashy and stuff.
There was definitely some trashy elements. You could definitely tell they were like, we've got an R rating and we're just going to show Kevin Bacon porking somebody for over a minute. We're going to keep the camera there and it's just going to happen because that's why we paid Kevin Bacon to be in this movie so we can see his body.
Yep. And surprisingly, he wasn't really popular at that time and stuff. So this is before he even like Footloose and whenever he became big and stuff. And I actually found this looking this up. But apparently the most like noteworthy actor amongst the survivors was the guy who played Bill, who apparently is the son of Bing Crosby.
Oh, Bill Crosby.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think that's a character's name. No, the actor's. No, Harry Crosby. Okay. Although
Talk
Bill
about scary.
Yeah, so that's the interesting aspect is just, Kevin Bacon was, not as big as he is nowadays, especially and stuff, but it's definitely interesting kind of seeing like the early roles stars will take on before they get big and stuff, because they're basically like, whatever works. But yeah, that's kind of like the interesting back history to Friday the 13th whenever they were writing it. So a lot of tropes you found kind of came from Halloween, but really were just defined in Friday the 13th. And even though it does have those tropes, it's still an enjoyable movie for me personally and stuff. It's like just a fun flick to watch overall. There's only like a couple of things that I usually have a bit of an issue with whenever it comes to this film. So one of the things, and I actually didn't even realize this until I watched it on my Shout Factory Friday the 13th movie, is the snake in a cabin, right? So that snake, whenever they decide to kill it, and I only warn people about this as a little bit of a spoiler because it was a surprise to me, but that snake was real. They actually killed that snake.
No, that's what disturbed me about it, because that looked like killing a snake. I've seen a few snakes killed in my day. You grow up in the country, snakes get killed with a shovel all the time. I was like, they really killed a snake? That wasn't... Yeah. There's no way they special effects did that so well.
Yeah.
They just murdered a snake.
Yeah, no, that was no Tom Savini effect and stuff. That was a real-life murder, which kind of disturbs me, because really, I never like to see, like, anything killed just in the name of film and stuff. Like, I don't think there's ever really a good reason to kill an animal on screen and stuff first like that. And apparently it wasn't even planned necessarily for them to kill the snake. So whenever they had the person on set, like, that was the person's snake, like the little animal trainer.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So they didn't even know. Wow.
Yeah, so they just chopped him up. And so apparently the guy had to, like, calm down because they chopped his snake
Yeah, I'd
into
be
bits.
pretty upset. Imagine
Yeah,
somebody.
so-
I mean, that's probably like their pet.
Mm-hmm,
Imagine somebody doing that to your dog. Jesus.
yeah, exactly. So that part for me is just kind of like, not a fan of that and stuff. And so I always like to mention like that as a possible warning for people because it is pretty shocking and stuff. Because
Yeah.
I always thought it was like just okay, it's like a rubber snake and stuff. But seeing that nicely 2K restored quality clearly shows. Oh yeah, no, that snake was just straight up murdered
That was a real
on
snake.
screen.
They
Yeah.
just killed it.
For sure. So that's like one of the things that I'm like pretty much like, I don't know about that. Kind of like that one particular scene in Evil Dead. You know, it's just one of those things that I don't look forward to, and I'm like, I just want to get past it and move on.
Right.
So it's that, and one of the other things that I love and hate about this movie, it takes its sweet time whenever it comes to doing certain tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the fact that if they're lighting a lantern, you're going to see them go through the entire steps of lighting the lantern. And one of the most oh my gosh, this scene, it kills me and it brings me to life at the same time, but it's whenever Alice goes to the kitchen to make coffee.
Yeah.
You watch the entire process,
Oh, yeah.
basically.
I was kind of a fan of that because a lot of that was I'd have to go back and rewatch it to collect to be sure. But a lot of that was like a big oneer. It was like there was a one shot. You know what I mean? They kept on that shot for like a minute and a half. I feel like just like following it around making that coffee. And it really added to the disturbing element because at that point in the film you had a lot of reason to be like concerned. So it was really anxiety inducing.
Wow.
I enjoyed that part.
Well, that's actually pretty surprising and stuff because I know with Halloween, whenever they would slow down the moment, it just kind of slowed down the movie for you in general.
Right, but like I didn't. Like, a lot of those moments, I wasn't feeling the anxiety of they were about to be killed in Halloween. But in this one, I was like, okay, it's around any corner. And this one, that the movie had demonstrated from the get-go, right, from the first kill, that they're not afraid to do jump scares. And now that's like, and so I think that's where the anxiety came in. Is it's like, okay, I know there's gonna be a jump scare here somewhere, and I'm just waiting for it to happen. And it really drives home the body genre element of horror, you know what I mean? Like, I was physically anxious, and I think that's exactly what they were going for.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you definitely enjoyed that, because for me, it's like, I guess because I've seen it so many times, I just know nothing's going to happen. But it was funny, because with that coffee scene, I literally just started bursting out laughing, because with the coffee lid, she doesn't even screw it on tightly. And it's such a minute thing, but I guess it just comes with repeat viewings where I just lose my mind. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, screw it on.
Yeah.
I did get kind of mad there. I was like, just put it back on.
Yeah.
The next person that picks it up is going to get just a whole pot of coffee.
I know, it's just like with a salt shaker whenever you screw the top off.
When you screw it off just enough, and then the next person then pours a whole bunch of salt in their soup, you know what I mean?
And, they end up salty.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest crime that happened in that movie. Just screw it on.
Yeah. there was more screwing going on. If
was
you know
not
what
as
I
much
mean.
as Halloween. I mean, come on. Halloween was horny. This movie was also horny, but I'm keeping track here. Only one boobs count.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, surprisingly. Yeah, it was just only one.
Just a pair of boobies.
Well, just lacking behind on the tit department.
I know.
Yeah.
There was plenty of, attempts to show skin. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
But there was only one boobie count.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it was pretty equal overall for male and female, I felt like.
That's true. There was equality there. There was a lot of skin on all parts, especially sexy camp counselor guy that was just jean shorts.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Christie, the guy who's running it. Oh, yeah, no, he was working it.
70s glasses, 80s glasses, those little round wire frames.
Yeah.
He was just like, hey, I'm chopping wood. You can chop my wood, if you know what I mean. But I'll give you to the end of the week to decide.
So, yeah, I think I just picked up what you said. So, whenever it comes to the story itself, I feel like it has a little bit more like gas in a tank. It's not so much like Halloween where it's kind of like, okay, here's the setting and go
Right.
type deal. It's kind of like it trickles along because it's focusing on all of the survivors and what they're doing, which I think definitely helps kind of add momentum to the story and stuff. And
Yeah.
without getting too spoilerific, again, it does kind of make it a lot more investing towards it, because even with Halloween, whenever we did switch to the other survivors, like nothing really happened too much. It was just them chilling.
Yeah.
Was there any other aspects that you found with this movie, without jumping to like the big spoilerinos and stuff, that you're a fan of or not so much a fan of?
Yeah. The editing was shit.
Ooh.
Yeah. Just those giant white flashes of light.
Oh,
And just
the transitions were
no
definitely
concerns for my retinas.
yeah, and we're watching this like at night, and we had the lights off in the living room when we were watching it, and I tried to warn Aaron anytime, because I've seen this movie so many times, like, okay, get ready to shield your eyes.
Yeah.
Like the Ark of the Covenant, it's opening up itself whenever it flashes to white, because I think it does it 4 times, I think.
It does it like twice in the opening credits, and then like 2 more times at least, where it's just pure white screen.
Although I think one of them was just like literally a flashlight they're literally shining on the screen.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that was definitely a little bit annoying and stuff, but I think it's like, it wouldn't be too bad if you watched it while it was a little bit brighter, but just whenever it's just dark and it's just that pure bright white thanks to the 2K restoration.
Yeah, well, I imagine it was the same way in the theater, just like, just blows you out, and you throw your popcorn all over yourself, and you see all the jizz stains on the floor, and you're like, isn't that supposed to be this bright in here? Jeez. Yeah.
One thing I will mention, because I know this is like on the precipice of spoilers, but not really. I was very shocked to see that out of all the movies, this is the one that got you scared the most a little bit. Like, you weren't frightened and stuff by any means, but I only had to look over to you because I saw you like jolt up during one of the scenes.
Jump scares, man. Those are the ones that get me. And we really haven't watched movies so far that like rely on jump scares. There's been a few jump scares, but that hasn't been like the fueling element of the horror.
Oh, for sure.
And it seemed like that was most of what was going on here. Is like they spook you up a few times with some jump scares, and then they're like tease it throughout, like, oh, they're gonna get there.
Yeah.
Oh, they're gonna jump.
Yeah. The question I have for you and stuff, whenever it comes to jump scares and stuff, did it feel like cheap to you, or were they well placed for you?
I think there's probably an art to it. Because I'm not super well versed in horror. Like, I don't know that I could like confidently say like this was a great use. This was but I do think they acknowledged that it's a trick you can only pull a few times, and then to really stretch out the in-betweens. And I think that's probably the way you handle it, and I think they handled it pretty well.
I definitely agree with that. I never felt like, oh, come on, type deal. Every jump scare felt like legitimate, like, okay, definitly makes sense that it would be there.
And we can elaborate more about the end once we get into spoiler territory.
Gosh, yeah.
But there was that one jump scare at the end. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And then whenever they go and they show, like, right before the credits, and they show the lake again, I thought they were going to do it again. And if they did it again, I would be really mad and bump the whole movie down like 2 points.
Whoa, really? Oh my gosh.
I like, fuck you.
Oh my god, that would have really made you
But they didn't do it. And,
well, that's good.
They resisted the urge. Thought they were gonna do it again just to like cut to credits or something, and I'd be like, that would have felt really cheap and dumb. Like, the movie's over, stop.
Yeah. Oh
but
my
gosh. They didn't do it.
Man. That was like a bunch of fire behind that one there.
Yeah. Well, it got me riled up, and I feel like that's what a horror movie is supposed to do. So I think of this one favorably.
Well, that's good. That's definitely good, because definitely kind of going into this one, I'm like, I mean, I could see you kind of going either way respectably and stuff. And so with me, I've always liked this movie a ton and stuff. I felt like it was a good one for me to kind of really dive into the world of horror with and stuff. And like I said, I've seen it so many times, and it never really gets tiring and stuff. Like, and even though there are some scenes where I'm like, okay, yeah, this part right here, and it does get a little slow. I think it only falls fart. It's only in part because I've seen it so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but even with repeat viewings and stuff, the good scenes are still really good, and even the slow scenes I don't mind as much. It's like, again, with Halloween, it would definitely be like, even though the slow scenes are like, oh, it's fine, that's how I kind of felt like Friday the 13th slower scenes, where it's like, okay, I get it. But I definitely like this one a ton. It's definitely one of my favorite horror movies and stuff. And even if there are like a couple of like instances that's like, okay, yeah, I don't like that, I usually can forgive it and stuff. So that's kind of where I stand at. Overall, whenever it comes to recommendations and kind of like how intense it is as a horror movie for people who aren't familiar with horror, what are your thoughts on it overall for all our peeps out there?
Well, we touched on this, but I know there are a lot of people that like. I know there are people out there that just don't like jump scares, and if that's you, and you just don't, you can't handle that, then I would stray away from this one unless you're really on a quest to, get a good background in horror, because obviously this is a classic. I would recommend it even for the non-horror fan if they're cool with horror. Just because I do think that plot is there, is very Halloween-y, like you were talking about the influence of Halloween. But it's like somebody actually wrote a script for it. You know what I mean? It's like there's an actual plot, and the characters are great. So I think it was just an improvement on what that foundation was. You know what I mean? So I give it a good I'd give it a good recommendation. And I can go a little bit more into why later, but I would just say give it a shot. It's a good movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of number would you throw at it there?
I would, and again, I can do my justifications whenever we get into the spoiler territory. I would give it about a 7. I was leaning like 6.5, but the more we talk about it, I'm thinking like a 7.
Yeah, I could definitely respect that and stuff, kind of going in there and stuff. I think 7 is definitely strong, and I do think, this is definitely a more intense film whenever it comes to it, but I also don't think it's like super duper scary. So if you're like wanting to view horror movies, I don't think this is necessarily a bad place to start. It's just, again, so long as you don't mind obviously the one scene with the snake there, and the scares, I feel like they're solid, but they're not like, it's not going to haunt your nightmares and stuff.
I do feel like by the end, you're gonna be cool with it. Once the whole story arc goes, you're not gonna be all up at night. But if you pause the movie in the middle, you might. You just fucking might.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like, if you get to the end, it's like, it ends...
there's a resolution.
Yes, exactly. But I will say this, like, because even though I did kind of... didn't really get scared throughout the movie, I legitimately got frightened at the beginning of the movie, and it wasn't because of the movie. It's because my wife came home, and I wasn't expecting her to be home. Like, again, she was hanging out with the in-laws, and so that's why I had to kind of quickly come over here. So I wasn't expecting her home, and we're at the beginning of the movie where not really, I think it's whenever they're at 1958, whenever they're like having that flashback.
Yeah, it was just barely in there.
Yeah, and it
was right after the first shh.
And again, like, she's not opening it like a normal person. It's like jiggling the doorknob. She's
like fumbling with her keys, and it was
and I legitimately was kind of stressed out and kind of being like, what is going on?
And it was doubly kind of scary because, like, right before we started the movie, a fire truck, like, had pulled up to one of the neighbors, and so the red and blue lights were already, like, flashing through the window, and we had kind of opened the door to be like, what's this going on? Oh, none of our business. Okay.
Yeah.
But then, like, just to have something, like, rattling the door when there's, like, police
lights in the
exactly.
I was
like, oh.
Yeah, I was pretty stressed out and stuff, like, genuinely scared. Like, out of all the times I've seen a movie, I think this is the most scared I've been. But even with that, I feel like this is probably the most fun I've had watching the film with somebody. I felt like whenever something like crazy would happen, or even like scary and stuff, I felt like we had a lot more laughs this time round and stuff. So I think it was definitely a good film to watch with like a group and stuff. So this is definitely one of the most, this has probably been the funnest film to watch with you out of all of them so far. So keeping that in mind, and of course, like I said, all the points I had, like some of the stuff I'm not too big of a fan of, and then the stuff I really love, I come in at a very strong 8. Like 8 is a solid number for me and stuff. I would go up to a 9 and stuff, but there are just like certain stuff that kind of holds it back a little bit. So it's a very, very solid high 8, kind of almost on the precipice of 9. So it's definitely something I recommend watching if you're able to. Again, it's just a good time to watch it, and I would love watching this like in a cabin in the woods, or maybe hate it. I don't know. It could be like one of the two. But we're gonna go and jump into spoilers, because there's definitely couple of spoilers that I definitely want to hear Aaron talk about here and stuff. So definitely, if you haven't seen it, don't want to get spoiled, now's your time to leave. And
Get out of here.
we're now going to jump over to Aaron, who kind of gave little trickles and little sprinkles of hints of the spoilers that are to be found currently right now. And go ahead and just mention one of the spoilers.
Where's Jason?
Yeah.
Where is he?
I'm sure that was probably shocking to you whenever you found out.
And that's one of the things that I thought was good, and what I couldn't say explicitly when we're talking about the script portions, but like, that was a good twist. I hate even telling people that there's a twist before a movie, because then they expect something.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to talk about that in the spoiler part. But, it's his mom.
Yeah.
There's no, you do see Jason in the end, I guess, as the, in her dream, I guess, which I thought was kind of cheap. I always hate when there's a dream.
Yeah.
But I actually thought that was really good. It wasn't super scary once you realized it was this old lady like killing people with her delusions about her son drowning or whatever. Yeah. But I thought that was actually really clever, and I thought it was cool. But I was like, there's no hockey mask guy coming out of the lake. That's all I knew about Friday the 13th, but I guess that's not this movie.
Yeah, no. And that's the funny thing about it, is it's like one of those things that this is the first movie that came out, so obviously nobody really had the idea of Jason Voorhees being an icon and stuff. So whenever they're going and watching it, they're like, oh, okay, it's Mrs. Voorhees that's doing it type deal. And I think it's kind of like one of those things that because of the subsequent sequels that followed, it's kind of made the first film a lot more interesting and stuff. Because especially for me, I didn't know Jason wasn't in the first one. So whenever they show Mrs. Voorhees and stuff, I'm like, oh, she's the one that's been doing all of the killing all around, because they have the first person perspective and stuff from the killer's point of view, and you don't really get to see too many glimpses. Although on repeat viewings and stuff like that, like whenever you see like a hand pulled down the branches and you see like a couple of the rings there and stuff, it doesn't really give it away like, oh, it's a woman and stuff. But I had no idea, and I was paying attention to those details. I was like, who's this man in the cabin or whatever? But it was and apparently whenever they were filming it, they had trouble casting Mrs. Voorhees, because again, whenever it comes to like, a lot of older actors that they were trying to get in and had some star power behind them, surprisingly nobody really wanted to do this film, because it was just kind of viewed as utter trash and filth. It's definitely a left field role for somebody. I'm sure as like an aging woman actor, she's probably like, I'm used to being in Yoplait commercials, but Activia, But yeah, like, hey, do you want to be a mass murderer? Like, okay. Oh, and I forgot to mention this in the Halloween episode. I might as well throw it in here. So, fun fact about Jamie Lee Curtis. She doesn't like horror movies. Oh, and that's like her start. Yeah. Exactly. So, I thought that was an interesting tidbit. So, yeah, it's really funny how, like, again, like, with the 80s and this film coming out, like, horror still just had that reputation of just being viewed as garbage and stuff. So whenever it came to filming, they didn't actually have Betsy Palmer, who plays Mrs. Voorhees. They instead had different like people like dressed up, because they knew they wanted it to be Mrs. Voorhees. Like that was Victor Miller's intent the entire time, is like, okay, I want to make the mom of the boy who drowned the killer instead. And so that's what's going on currently. And so whenever it came to Betsy Palmer taking on the role, she only did it because she needed cash for her car that just broke down. So she explicitly said, if it wasn't for that, I probably would have not done this film. But I feel like out of all the characters in the film, she's the strongest one. Like, she clearly
She's
has
pretty
acting
good.
chops
Yeah,
and stuff. And it's not to say the others are bad. I think they're pretty good overall and believable and stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like, cheesy believable, but
Yeah.
she definitely, like, was going at it
Mm-hmm.
and stuff and giving it her all, which is great, especially since she wasn't really, like, on board to do it. It's just, again, she
Right.
cares about the art of acting.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, a lot of the backstory that she kind of developed with her and Jason, she kind of built it herself just to really build this character up about a grieving mother who lost her boy because the camp counselors were off having sex.
And it's just like really refreshing to have a like a real motivation. Yeah, she's crazy. Yeah, she's like murdering people that have nothing to do with it. But there's like a real trauma there. And that's something that I did find interesting about Mike Myers, even though he's just like kind of evil. Like, at least there was like a moment where they show like this is why he's killing people. And it's not just like, even though I actually really like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff, it's not just like that kind of situation where they're like, we're just killing people because we like killing people. You know?
Yeah.
And that seems like so many of the motivations behind killings in a lot of these movies are just like, because it's a horror movie, people die, you know? But yeah, this one, I do think that was a really interesting motivation, and one that you find out after much of the killings happen.
No, for sure. And the monologue she gives whenever she's explaining to Alice why she's killing people and stuff and just telling the backstory of Jason, I feel like it's just one of the strongest scenes and well written overall and stuff. So
and just seeing Alice figure out that she's in danger, you know, and she rushed
yeah,
because like, okay, and that's a little bit of a like a trope too, where like she sees this car pull up and she's like, finally someone that rescues me from the killer, and then she runs right into the killer, right? Yeah, like of course that happens in horror movies and in horror media, but like I didn't expect. I was right there with her, where I was like, okay, I was hesitant when she ran up to the car, but then I see this old lady, and I was like, okay, well, that's not Jason. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
you're like, whew, I thought it was a killer,
and then it was, and to like come to that realization with her slowly, like she's like starts to realize, okay, you see, oh, there's something off. Okay, okay, I need to get out of here. Okay, and then okay, this is the killer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it was wild, and I think really powerful, because I think it's really hard in any other way to pull off the kind of moment where the killer's in the room and the audience doesn't know it either. You know what I mean? After all this killings happen, because it's like, okay, there's always some element of mystery when you haven't seen the killer that far into the film. So it's like, okay, this guy's probably the killer. You always have that suspicion, but like I really didn't. Like, I was like, okay, this lady might be collaborating with her. So I was like, this lady might be no good. But, like, yeah, I really didn't expect it. And I was like, oh, this is Jason. And it might be because I had that preconceived notion of, like, I'm waiting for the guy in the hockey mask. But
oh, for sure.
And yeah, I think that makes it even more powerful coming back and watching it after all these, after everybody knows Jason and knowing that this is what he's from. So.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely, surprisingly, helps the film that there was a lot of subsequent sequels and stuff that I know you know this, that feature Jason. Like, you've seen the character, you know he's coming.
I do feel like if this was not the first movie, right? If like they just started with Jason stuff and then they just plucked this plot and put it in some random sequel, people would be like, this is stupid. And it would be like a cult classic
for
or something.
sure. They would definitely.
Like, this movie's dumb. Where's Jason? You know what I mean? But like, I think this is genius, and like, it's great.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like I said, Victor Miller, who wrote it, didn't see any of the sequels and just never intended on Jason being evil. Jason was just a victim whenever it came to it. So he's a little, I wouldn't say annoyed, I guess disappointed about the way the series went, even though I think it's great, kind of what they did. But overall, it still doesn't take away that she's, Mrs. Voorhees in the film, I think it's just a strong killer. Like, I definitely would be scared of her and stuff, even though the fight scenes between her and Alice did get pretty slapsticky.
It was so weird because, like, she'd been so efficient killing all these people.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
And then it's just Alice at the end, and I was seriously thinking, I was like, this might be one of the first horror movies I've seen, or the only one I know about, where, like, nobody survives, you know what I mean? Because I was like, I don't see how Alice is gonna like fight off Jason whenever like there's no help coming. I was trying to piece it together in my head. I was like, does Like the only thing I could see is that the chief that dropped off the camp counselor guy like finishes up his assignment and goes to check on him and realizes there's a killer and does the thing that the doctor did in the last movie, you know, and bam bam bam, and then that's how she survives. It was like I don't see her like fighting off Jason, like come on. But then it totally made sense once I saw it was this woman, and I was like, okay, you know, like she's a deranged woman that's very crafty and has been picking them off one by one, but it's not like it's not like this young woman and this old woman are going to be outmatched strength-wise, you know?
Yeah.
So it was, it was interesting that she's,
Yeah, absolutely.
It was an interesting dynamic, and I was like, okay, I can see now how this survivor is going to survive, but obviously she's in a lot of danger too.
Yeah. I also think, you mentioned a lot of the people she killed earlier in the film. The film is definitely not shy to show you the gore and stuff, as Texas Chainsaw or Halloween is even, and stuff. They will definitely show you the gruesome effects, whether it's Annie's throat getting slit, or this is the part that really gave you the jump scare, is after Kevin Bacon is done fornicating, and he's smoking a doobie, and then all of a sudden, once he realizes Ned's blood is dripping on him, Mrs. Voorhees is grabbing him by the head and shoving an arrow through his throat.
Yeah. It's the hand that went around and it just grabbed him from under the bed. That was like, ooh, that's every kid's nightmare. Is like,
oh my gosh,
getting out of bed and the hand grabs your ankle or whatever. And I wasn't expecting it, because I mean, it was very clever to have like the blood drip on his forehead, and so your attention is like, okay, he's looking up. What's up? Like, come on, show me what's up. And then it's what's down. That's that scares you. So like it was a clever jump scare. I didn't appreciate it because it scared me, but
at least you can respect it. Yeah. No, it was funny too, because again, you know, you just like literally jumped up in the air and stuff.
You heard that's genuinely what I do when I get scared too. If you ever walk with me through a haunted house, is I'm really goofy just by default. That's just my scream was like, ah! That's actually how, if I was terrified in a real situation, I would actually scream like that.
Yeah, and it was just surprising because the other films we've shown you, you haven't done that. Like, none of the scares have really gotten you, and you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think, probably was the closest whenever it came to it.
It was like just real creepy and the whole time, so it was like unsettling. But yeah, this one was just very jumpy.
Yeah, for sure.
And
just bam.
And I will get jumpy. Yeah. So.
But I do enjoy the kills in a movie. I feel like it is fairly creative. Again, you made the joke whenever Nettie decides to shoot an arrow towards Brenda. I think it was Brenda anyways. Yeah, that or Mercy. That you're like, someone's going to die by an arrow.
I thought Ned was going to shoot the killer. I was like, that's my bold prediction, because so much of the setup of horror movies, as I picked up on so far, is about foreshadowing, you know, dropping off Annie at the cemetery, you know, the Omen crazy guy, you know, these things, like, they hint at what's to come, and especially in stuff like Evil Dead, like we were talking about, where they show you things and you're like, that's going to come into play later, and then it does. And there was stuff like that in this movie too, and so I was just like making a prediction, like, okay, Ned's gonna shoot the killer with a bow and arrow. Maybe that's how they buy some time or something. But I was wrong. But the bow and arrow did come into play.
Oh, for sure, multiple times. That was one of the scenes that blinded you whenever it came to the bright lights. Right. But yeah, this film is just still enjoyable. Like I said, you're just kind of taking the atmosphere, and it is genuinely creepy, especially like once Alice kind of realizes what's going on, and she spends like the last part of the film running for her life and stuff throughout the woods. And you know, there's like the so I didn't realize this, and I would have never guessed this unless I had looked this up before, but apparently the sound design was that of Betsy Palmer saying "killer mommy killer," and it's like the ma ha ha. So it's like which I definitely dig this sound a lot, but it's funny how so many people have misinterpreted it. Like, even as a kid, I would be like, shh, shh, shh. Like, because that's what it sounds like. It's so distorted and stuff. So I think the mood is also good, and the music slaps for me also. Like, you know, it's almost up there with John Carpenter's Halloween, but I feel like it's just John Carpenter just hit it out of the park in the music department with that film. But Friday the 13th for me isn't too far behind. I believe it was Henry Manfredini who did it as well and stuff. So I really liked it. It added to the music and stuff and the intent. And what did you think about the kills and the effects overall whenever it came to it, since we can especially discuss it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty on brand for horror for me. I think it's gruesome. They're not afraid to show the knife across the throat. It's stuff that I've gotten used to now. I don't know if it was shocking at the time or not, but it was. I do think they were creative with all the kills. The arrow through the stomach. There were some that they just like left off screen too. You know, like Ned and Bill. In fact, all the men really is they just kind of left them off. Well, besides Kevin Bacon, but. They just kind of left some of them off screen for the other characters to discover. And those were but even just the really simple one of like when the camp counselor gets back and there's the light and he's like walking towards the light and then gets stabbed by it. You know, like even something as simple as that I think was pulled off really effectively. Just how they did the camera movements. I mean, there's a lot of good cinematography.
Yep. And as clarification, the version we watched is the unrated version. So some of the scenes had to be trimmed down, like that Kevin Bacon scene with the throat. Like they had to like lower it in order to be released as R in theaters and stuff, because obviously for 1980 it's pretty brutal and convincing and stuff for sure. And then especially whenever Alice is charging at Mrs. Voorhees with the machete and just cleaves it right off.
That was a little goofy. There was so much that I give this film credit for: characters' decisions, the way people died, all these sorts of things. It does start to fall apart a little bit at the end. One of those is, she just cleaves Mrs. Voorhees' head clean off with a machete, which was surprising that she had the gumption to do that when she did the horror movie thing that pisses me off earlier, where she was like, I'm going to hit you over the head with a frying pan, and you're just going to go unconscious for some reason. And I'm just going to leave this knife right next to you, and I'm just going to go walk and turn my back and go sit somewhere else. I'm tired of horror movie people doing that.
Understandable. Yeah, it's definitely not the smartest decision, but I mean...
I get... So many of the decisions is like, okay, this isn't a smart decision. Like, you know, when she runs in the car and there's a dead body there and she gets freaked out and runs out. It's like, okay, if you were thinking rationally, you just turn on the car and drive. This dead body's not going to hurt you. But of course you're not going to run into a car. You know, I get stuff like that. What I don't get is, like, whenever you see very clearly the source of something that scares you, like with the snake... that scared them all. They all rushed, and they constantly had eyes on it, and they'd hit it with pillows until it died. You know, they cut its head off. That's what you're supposed to do when there's a threat in the room, and I feel like that was a much more natural response. And then, but like, so many horror movie things just so that the killer can get another chance to kill. They do that thing where they're just like, oh, well, threat neutralized. Let me go sit by the lake. You know what I mean? Like, really? Like, really? Whenever I see, you know, a spider in the room or something and I throw my shoe at it, I stare at it until I know it's dead. You know what I mean? And I stand from a distance and I'm like, okay. That's how people react to threats. But so that, I mean, that's obviously a minor gripe, but it is towards the end there where they started making decisions that I didn't think were realistic.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a little frustrating to see some of the decisions they make, and even though like a lot of them are like, okay, I can understand that, there are some that I'm just like, don't know about that, especially with Alice and stuff, which I had realized she literally has the danger chasing. Like, most people weren't chased, they were just killed on the spot. Like, they don't get a chance. And stuff, so I can understand it, but definitely between the survivors and stuff, while I like Alice, I'm also kind of like, I feel like you're making kind of poor decisions and stuff, as opposed to...
which is strange for her character, because she was like the one that was the most paranoid given her context, you know what I mean? Like, all she knew is that there were people missing, and then they found that axe in the bed, but they didn't really know, and so she made the decision to, like, bust down the door, like break the glass and, to get inside to make the phone call. And I was like, that's like smart based on what the viewer knows, but if I was there, I'd be like, God, calm down, Alice, let's just wait.
That's exactly what I thought, because she was confident, like, I got this.
Let me just shatter this window. And And I was like, wow. And then for that same character to later on just be like, okay, one frying pan to the noggin killed this lady. Let me just take a swim.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I feel like one of the very last points I definitely want to discuss looking forward and stuff is that one scene where she's in the middle of the lake on the boat, and it seems like everything's good until Jason pops out of the water.
That one was, if I had to pinpoint a jump scare that was cheap, it was that one. Only because it was a dream or whatever.
Oh my, yeah, that's a thing that I have an issue with. That's definitely one of the things that I'm like not a fan of, and I think it's just fairly agreed upon and stuff that I think the film should have just ended there.
Yeah.
Like Jason comes out of the water, grabs Alice, pulls her back into the movie and stuff, and instead of like oh, it was just a dream.
Well, I will say it's interesting what they did to Alice, where she was obviously traumatized by this, and like she's worried about the boy in the lake now. It's almost like she inherited the curse or whatever that Mrs. Voorhees had. Where she's like, okay, now she's the one that's concerned about Jason. And where that leads, you know, obviously they probably don't pick that up in the next. But if I were to make a sequel to this movie, I would be like, okay, now she's the killer. You know what I mean?
Ooh,
like she inherits the curse or whatever.
That actually would have been a pretty interesting spin on that and stuff. So, and the way I always interpreted that is the fact of like, okay, Jason's back from the dead, but it raises several questions that we could discuss later once we view the other films in a series. Sure. But I think that's definitely a stronger point, is like she kind of is cursed with the madness and stuff of just being a survivor.
That was her
there.
dream, right? What we're told by the film there is that this is something that only lives in her head, just like the killer. She was like the death of her son was something that only lived in her head that motivated her or whatever. So I get why in the later movies they probably like, we need a cool killer, and so they made Jason, because that body that jumps out of the water is terrifying.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a scary prop.
And it was actually a boy who grabbed her.
Yeah. It was like a real guy. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but he was spooky.
For sure.
But yeah, like I get why they went that route, but like as far as what the film's logic tells me, you know, is that only exists in her head.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of I wish they wouldn't have done the scene afterwards they did of her just being in a hospital and stuff, but I feel like if it did have to happen, I feel like it's a fine ending overall and stuff. Like whenever it cuts and he's like, then he's still out there and stuff, and it fades to the lake, and the thing that always gets me is that it looks, I know it is in bubbles and stuff, but it looks like something's moving in the water there.
I think they kept that shot on purpose. Yeah, I'm sure it's a fish or whatever, but yeah, it's like, it has that mystery. I do think that's a good line to end it on. I think the hospital part overall is a little like, but yeah, I do think that's a good line to end on.
Yeah,
that he's still out there.
It just it sucks because I feel like it has a strong ending, just like with the music just being peaceful, like it's over, she's won, the police are coming in, she's resting on the lake, you know, like beautiful, gorgeous scenery. Like it's one of my favorite shots there, and then just seeing Jason come out. Yeah. But I feel
it just I just hate the dream part because it leaves me questioning. You know, was that like
what does it mean?
When did the dream start and when did it stop? You know what I mean? Because it doesn't give you those parameters. You know what I mean? Yeah. So did they find her out of the lake at all? When the police rolled up? Was that part real? And then, but it sounded like, because the police officer's like, we didn't see any boy. So it's obvious that she didn't actually. She probably just fell out of the canoe. But like, what, you know. Yeah. You know, so I think it lessens the impact of that scene.
For sure. I definitely agree with that statement overall and stuff. And I feel like it's just kind of like an even mixture. I feel like everything is real except Jason popping out of the water and stuff. But even then, it is kind of hard to interpret because, you know, after she beheads Mrs. Voorhees and decides, she's like, screw this, I'm going out on the lake where nobody can get me.
With no paddle at first, because she broke the paddle in half when she was fighting. And then there's a paddle in there in the dream scene, so maybe she just imagined having a paddle.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah.
And
I that was one of those things that was like weird, but also like artistic, and I get it. She just had horrible trauma, and she's been trying to escape, so she's still just gonna fuck off to the middle of the lake. And pass out and wake up. Like I kind of bought that. Yeah, it was just the part about the dream that really.
Yep. And to dive more into, like, while we're wrapping this up, I know we mentioned at the beginning there's like this big like legal case surrounding it between Sean S. Cunningham, the guy who produced Friday the 13th, and Victor Miller, who wrote it. And that's basically who exactly owns Jason Voorhees and stuff, because Victor Miller wrote the character Jason, but Sean S. Cunningham developed it into something bigger than what it was originally meant to be and stuff. Because like I said, Victor Miller in his mind is like, okay, he's the victim, and then Sean S. Cunningham's like, oh, we got big plans for him. So that's what the legal case was over and stuff, because really whenever it comes to all the money that is being earned and stuff, it's all been going to Sean S. Cunningham. Victor Miller was allegedly just a writer for hire and stuff whenever it came to it. So that's what the legal dispute's been about. And I believe Victor Miller won the case overall in the end and stuff. So it makes me curious to see what the future of Friday the 13th will be and stuff, because obviously it is a very, very, very financially successful franchise that I don't see dying anytime soon whatsoever. But aside from that, I don't really think there's a whole lot of other spoilers we need to discuss. Like I said, I felt like we discussed a lot of kill scenes and everything else. And yeah, overall, I think this is just one of the stronger films whenever it comes to the world of horror and stuff, that it's definitely one I recommend all you guys check out if you are interested. Like I said, you know, Aaron said out of 7, I said out of 8. So
I think it benefited a lot. I just as my closing remarks, I think it benefited a lot from the passage of time, and I think both just because you don't expect the Jason twist, because we expect, you know, there to be Jason in it, and he's not the killer. Not only was that a benefit from time, but also I just think a lot of the things that were probably just kind of corny dialogue in the time is like really funny now.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
It just makes the whole thing a little bit more enjoyable, maybe in ways that they didn't initially intend.
Yeah.
But that has aged really well, I think, to make it a really fun film that's also really scary.
Yeah, for sure. Because even though it is kind of like, I wouldn't say like the highest quality film and stuff, it's just a fun film. Like I said, you know, you and I, while we were watching it, like, this is the most fun I've had watching a film with you thus far. Not that it's ever been bad, but it's just like we were literally like laughing, cutting up during it and stuff. And I think it's just a enjoyable film to watch. And I guess that's why I am able to watch it over and over again and stuff, and not really ever get super duper tired of it. So yeah, that's another one for the books there and stuff. We have that one closed down. And for the next film, we're going to be taking on a film which also stars another iconic killer that has gone against Jason, as you've heard me mention multiple times. And hopefully whenever you watch it, it's not going to be too big of a nightmare for you.
Nightmare on Elm Street with Fredward.
Yes,
Freddy.
Fredward.
Freddie Gibbs.
Yeah, you know.
I know him. He's got the scary face and the claw and the best time to wear a striped sweater. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, you pretty much hit it on the head there. I can't argue with the points you have pointed out with our next film. So, thank you guys for listening to our podcast, and we'll see you all next time when we're Poppin the Scary with Wes. I had the closing line.
We'll just do it again.
Okay.
Target. We'll do it live.
So, okay, time to compose. I'm like crying already.
What do you Hans Zimmer? You don't need to compose. Just bam.
Yeah, we're just ad-libbing towards the end. We're going to be Poppin the Scary with Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street. Thank you guys for listening. See you next time.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're poppin' the scary.